This happened when I was a kid back in 2010, so I was 10 years old. It was Christmas Eve and I was in bed trying hard to go to sleep. Of course, I was so excited for the next day when I'd be able to open my presents that I couldn't sleep. Eyes squeezed as tight as possible. Tossing and turning, I heard a sound from downstairs. My parents never raised me to believe in Santa, so I figured it was them putting the presents out for the next day. Figured I'd go take a look to see how many packages I was going to have. Made my way down the stairs on tiptoes to be extra quiet. Got to the middle of the stairs where I could have a good view of the tree. To my surprise, there was a man in a Santa suit, not putting presents down, but picking them up instead. I immediately screamed and the man turned and looked at me, his eyes big in surprise. He put his finger to his mouth in a hushed gesture, but I kept screaming and crying. He tried to tell me he was Santa and I should go back to bed. Then you could hear my dad wake up, and he must have fallen out of bed because there was a loud thud on the floor. The guy grabbed his sack and bolted out the back door he had somehow forced open and was gone in the night. It took my mom almost an hour to calm me down while Dad was on the phone with the police and then dealing with them when they got there. They caught the guy a couple miles away. He had been smart enough to have a change of clothes on him, but either too dumb or greedy to have ditched the huge red sack with fur around the top. A guy walking around in regular clothes with a large Santa bag at 2 in the morning was kind of a giveaway. They also found a meth pipe on him and a small baggie of drugs. He was put away for a few years on various charges. My parents told me all this because they were always ones to keep things real, and they wanted me to know that he would never come back. It was kind of traumatizing, but I think less so because I never believed in Santa, so it didn't change my view of him. I knew there were bad people in the world, but it wasn't some kind of revelation that someone as nice as Santa could do something so evil, if that makes sense. This was definitely the scariest thing to happen to me on Christmas, and now that I'm 21 and living on my own, I make sure everything is locked tight on Christmas Eve, and I still have problems sleeping on that night.
Christmas last year was very rough. I had lost my job due to COVID, and while the supplemental unemployment helped, it didn't make up for everything. So after braving Black Friday for the first time in years, I was able to get a few gifts for my family. It wasn't much at all. A game and a couple of books for my son, some clothes for my wife, and some things for my daughter she had wanted to decorate her room with. My wife had picked me up a couple of things too. There wasn't a lot, but I was grateful there was something. 2 nights before Christmas, and we'd gone out to be with some friends and family for an early celebration. It really helped to lighten the mood and make things feel positive again after a year of struggling, fear, and frustration. We got home around midnight and went inside the house. Instantly, something felt off. I don't know what gave me the feeling initially. There was nothing noticeably out of place when we first entered the house. I'll give you a quick layout of the place to help you with what happened next. When you first come in, there's a little foyer with a coat closet and a place to take off your shoes. Right in front of that is the wall where the kitchen is behind, and you can go left into the dining room or right into the living room. Then there is a stairway in the living room that leads upstairs to the hallway where the bedrooms are. Or you could go downstairs into the rec room, and there's one more bedroom down there. It's kind of an odd layout, but it's close to my work and suits us fine. So right when I came in, I couldn't see what the rest of the house looked like, but like I said, it felt off. I had a funny feeling. I turned and told my wife to stay where she was, and to have her phone ready, just in case. Then I went to the living room. Nothing was moved or out of place. But then I looked at the Christmas tree and noticed a bunch of broken ornaments on the floor and the lights were everywhere. When I took a closer look, I saw that all the presents were gone. The sound of feet heading down the stairs didn't give me much time to think, and I went to see who was there. 2 steps before the bottom, I heard a gun cock and stopped dead in my tracks. Next, I heard a man whisper, "Hurry up." Fear gripped me, and my chest tightened. I was too afraid to move. There was the clear sound of the egress window being wound open, and then I heard the screen pop out and some people climbing through the window. I stayed there for what felt like forever before I could move again, and went upstairs and told my wife to call the police. We'd just been robbed. I went into the kitchen and saw that our back door had been busted wide open, then went upstairs and some things from the rooms had been taken as well. The police came and we filed a report. The people that broke in were never caught, and if they were, they weren't linked to us. Homeowners insurance reimbursed us for the stolen items. Christmas came a little late that year. But it isn't about the presents. It's about the fear I felt on those steps. If I had turned that corner, I know I would have been shot. It's also about losing the feeling of safety in your own home. Something I'm not sure I will ever fully get back.
I'm a single mother. It's a tough job. I work full-time and take care of my 9-year-old full-time. As you can guess, it's exhausting. 2 years ago, I took my then 7-year-old to see Santa at the mall. This Santa gave me weird vibes as soon as we got there. He was staring at me the whole time, like even before it was my son's turn. Even while he was talking to other kids, his eyes never left me. Still, I just wanted to get this over with. I was tired, overworked, still had shopping to do, and I wanted my kid to have some good memories of the holidays. So I waited in line until it was our turn and put my baby in Santa's lap. One of the elves came up and asked me some questions about the size of the pictures and what I wanted. It was the only time I wasn't focused and listening to what my kid was saying to Santa. Got the whole thing over with and then go through the mall to do some more shopping. My kid was excitedly saying that Santa was going to come to our house and visit. Of course, I thought he meant he was excited for Christmas when Santa would leave all his presents, and didn't think much more of it. 2 days later, as I was leaving for work, I noticed a car on the opposite side of the road. The driver was still in it, and the guy was staring at me while I got into my car to head out. Didn't think much of it, but then when I came home, the car and the guy were still there in the exact same spot. He was staring at me again and watched me as I went into my house. The next morning, the same car and guy were there, but a house over. He was still staring at me. I made a mental note to call the police if the car was still there when I got back, which it was. I was heading into my house when I heard a car door close behind me. I turned around and the guy who had been in the car was coming across the street, right at me. I was a little freaked out and tried to get into the house, but he got there before I could even turn the key. He explained that he was the Santa that had talked to my son. He found out where I lived when my kid had told him. My then 7-year-old had memorized his address and was always excited to tell everyone. I don't blame him at all, though. It was really weird and frightening that a mall Santa had listened to him and thought it was appropriate to stalk me, then try and come to talk to me. I didn't tell him this part though, which is I'm a single mother who has had some pretty bad experiences, and I don't intend to expose my kid to strange men. I'd rather just focus on raising my boy and do the best I can. Besides, his grandpa is very much in our lives and gives him a great male role model. So I told the guy I'm not interested and to please leave me alone. He protested and gave me some lame excuses, even got kind of aggressive to the point I had to tell him to leave or I'd call the cops. I thought that was the end of it until a few days later I began to find little presents, flowers, and even chocolates on my doorstep. I never saw his car again and the guy never gave me his name, so there wasn't much I could tell the police. He also left little notes that bordered on the X-rated. It was pretty scary, honestly. About a week later, I found a message spray painted on my front porch to the effect that I belonged to him. That was the last straw, and I called the police. For the next few weeks, I kept getting these little presents. Then one day while at work, I got a phone call from the police. They had caught the guy trying to break into my house while I was gone. They had been sending out one of their patrols to go by my house at random times, and it was by sheer luck they had been by that day at the right time. They saw him trying to go into my house through a side window. When they got him, he said he was my boyfriend and lived there, but had lost his key. I told them that was not the case. They searched him and his car. He didn't have anything weird with him. No tape, rope, handcuffs, nothing like that. He got jailed for a year and then was under house arrest for another year and has a parole officer he has to check in with. It was his first offense. He also has to take some classes and undergo mental health counseling. I don't know what his deal was or why he picked me. Now I don't take my kid to Mall Santas anymore.
This happened in 2019. I was in my second year of college and living in a townhouse about a 10-minute walk from campus. I lived with 2 other girls at the time, but they were all back at their parents' house for the holiday. I work in healthcare and was working Christmas this year. A little bit of backstory. There used to be 4 of us living there, but one girl had moved out due to issues with her boyfriend. He was a jackass who abused our kindness on allowing him to stay there. Was only supposed to come every so often, but basically ended up living there. We told her she needed to kick him out after an incident with him one night, after he got physical with her and verbally abusive with the rest of us. She wouldn't listen, and we told her we would have to talk to the landlord then. Long story short, she ended up moving out and left on bad terms with us. At this point, it was affecting everyone, and we didn't feel safe with him there, so she moved out. Okay, back to the story. It was Christmas Eve, and I worked the next day, so I was getting ready for bed. I locked the doors, turned the lights off, and went downstairs, where my bedroom was. I was scrolling on TikTok for about an hour. It was Christmas Day at this point, when I heard what sounded like the chairs in the kitchen move. The kitchen is right above my bedroom. I thought maybe I was hearing the neighbors next door, as we share the same walls, and sometimes they can be loud. But I remembered one of them texting me and asking me to bring in a package they were expecting while they were all gone at home. The noise was short-lived, and so I just brushed it off. Next thing I know, my bedroom door is being opened slowly. In this moment, I get a flashback and remember my second grade teacher telling us about the time someone broke into her house, and she acted as if she were asleep, so if they were just there to rob her, they wouldn't feel a need to hurt her if she saw them. But my freaking phone screen is lighting up my scared jaw-dropped face, so I can't act like I'm asleep. So there I was, laying in my bed, shitting myself while this guy has one foot in my bedroom with the door cracked open. It felt like an eternity, but in reality it was probably more like 10 seconds of us looking at one another. He slowly takes his foot out and closes my door. I sit there just in complete, utter shock. I couldn't make out what he looked like as my eyes were adjusting to the dark again from the phone screen. All I could see was a backwards baseball cap. I knew I had to call the police, but my anxious ass knew if I called, it would alert my parents' phones that I called. Me being dumb as hell was like, well, I don't want to make them worry. Also, I was scared he might still be somewhere in the house. I didn't know what he would do if he heard me call. So I texted the guy I was seeing at the time and tell him some random guy just broke into my house and came into my room. He snapped me out of it and told me to call the police, and so I did. The dispatcher asked me if I felt comfortable to go unlock the front door for them so they didn't have to break it down. And I told her no way. I don't care if the door is broken. I'm not going up there alone. A couple of minutes later, I see flashlights shining through my window. I hear the police knocking at the door and announcing themselves. They got in and asked me where I was. I came out of my room and they came and got me. They told me to wait on the back porch while two of them searched the house and one stayed with me. It was like that shit you see in movies where they have their guns and turn the corner with their partner and everything. They didn't find anyone, and I said nothing looked like it had been taken. They even tried to get fingerprints, but were unsuccessful. They then started asking me questions and informed me that the back door was unlocked and had no signs it had been broken. I told them I locked it. Luckily, the guy I was talking to stayed with me that night, but I still couldn't sleep. I kept on having to go check every inch of the house over and over. I placed chairs under the door handles, on the front door, back door, and my bedroom. The next day, I informed our landlord and she refused to come out and change the locks. And she never ended up changing them for the rest of the time we lived there. Every time I go to bed now, I triple check all the doors have been locked. Doesn't matter where I am. I have a dog now, and he helps my anxiety of intruders, as well as a recent purchase of a Ring doorbell. I believe it was our old roommate's boyfriend. I think they may have made an extra key for him because he was basically living there. But I don't understand why he didn't do anything to me, the house, or our belongings. If it were someone random, I don't know why they wouldn't have done what they intended, and that could be many different possibilities. I don't know what their intentions were that night, but to the man who broke into my house on Christmas Eve, let's not meet again.
My mom passed away a couple of years ago, right around Christmas. Since then, the holidays have always been tough on me. Last year on Christmas Eve, after I'd put out all the presents, I went to bed. I had a dream that my mom was in. I was a kid again on Christmas Day and opened a present from her. It was a silver jewelry box that she had when I was younger. It had long been lost, but I remembered it because it had a beautiful design of a dove on the front, and there were olive branches along the side of it. I woke up the next day and opened the presents with the family. Every gift had been opened, and we were relaxing on the couch, drinking coffee and watching a movie. My youngest son came over and said there was one more present under the tree. I got up to look, knowing that all the presents had been opened, and the area had been cleaned up. I don't know how we missed anything. When I looked at the present, it was addressed to me from my deceased mother. No one confessed to having placed it under the tree, so I opened it up, and to my surprise, it was the same jewelry box my mom had when I was a kid. I broke down and started to cry because it was such a beautiful and heartfelt gift. Still, no one confessed to having placed it under the tree. Of course, my husband knows about the jewelry box. I had often said how I wished I had it to remember my mom by, but that box had been lost since before she had passed, either put somewhere in storage and forgotten about, sold, or stolen. My mom never remembered giving it away, but when you're old, your memories tend to fade, and I hadn't asked her about it until she was old, and she died not long after I had asked about it. If it was my husband, and maybe he bought a replica, it is one of the most thoughtful things he has ever done. It doesn't look like a new jewelry box, since it has some tarnish on it and it looks aged. Maybe he got it from an antique store. I don't really know. That doesn't explain the dream I had of it the night before, and I'm pretty sure he would have taken credit for doing something so lovely. For now, I'm holding on to it being a last gift from my mother. That fills me with a lot of peace at the moment when otherwise, I'm usually heartbroken this time of year.
It was Christmas Eve and I was a freshman in high school. My family had been split up for some time, so normally we trade off a Christmas Day and a Christmas Eve every year. And this year I had come home early from my grandparents' Christmas party, while everyone went to my aunt and uncle's, celebrating at another party. When I was dropped off, my cousins offered to stay with me for a few hours, yet I declined. I thought it would be a good time to watch some of my new DVDs and get some alone time in the house, which was a rarity. I had noticed an unfamiliar car parked on the street. but I didn't think anything of it considering it was Christmas Eve. Probably a neighbor's relative or something. After I got inside, I locked the door, grabbed some snacks, and started to settle down. I hadn't been home for more than 15 minutes when there was a knock at the door. I unlocked the door and opened it only a crack to see a man standing there. Dark hair, glasses, slightly overweight, and dressed casually. He didn't look like much of a threat, but my stomach still dropped. He asked, "I was wondering about the car outside. Is it for sale?" I told him I didn't think so. "Is there someone here I can talk to about it?" I said, and quite stupidly I might add. "No, you can come back another time," and shut the door and turned the lock as fast as I possibly could. He reached for the handle immediately and started pounding on the door. I heard a string of profanities, and the pounding stopped. Terrified, I was crawling on the floor to the phone, hoping he wouldn't be able to see me through one of the windows. Then I heard the noises. Our house had an open garage door, and it led through to the laundry room, where the door lock was broken and no one had bothered to fix it. Just then I heard a man yell, and I saw the man through the window run off to his car and drive off. My uncle had gotten home just in time and scared the man off. Who knows what would have happened if he hadn't made it home in time. Sadly, we didn't get the plate number. Nothing ever came of it, but I'll never be home alone on a holiday again.
When I was 5, up until my mom remarried when I was 12, we lived in a really bad part of town. I remember hearing people yell at all hours of the night, police sirens constantly going off, and even a gunshot or two during the day. Fortunately, we lived in much better circumstances after that, but there is one time that will always stay with me. It was Christmas Eve. We didn't have enough money or even the space for a Christmas tree, but we did have a small fake one we would put presents under. Our apartment was only 2 bedrooms, and the living room and kitchen were pretty much the same room. In other words, the place was tiny. My sister and I shared a room, and we were woken up around midnight to the sound of the front door being opened. I remember we both looked at each other, not scared but excited. We thought Santa had finally come to deliver presents. We got up and quietly went to the door. It was a straight shot down the tiny hallway to the living room, and we had a clear line of sight to the door. We were both startled to see 2 men with flashlights walking around the place. We then saw my mom crouched in her doorway right across from ours. She looked terrified and motioned for us to go back to our rooms. My sister and I didn't know what was happening, so we listened and rushed back to bed. One of the men said, "Shit, there's nothing here," and next we heard the front door close. My mom then crept across the hallway and gathered us both up while she was crying. It was then that I, being the oldest at 9, clued into what had happened and started to cry with her. I think my sister joined in too. She was scared because both of us were crying now. Later, my mom went and pushed the couch in front of the door. They had busted the lock and there was no other way to lock the door. Once the sun came up, we all went to bed. The next day, there was a present for both my sister and I under the tree. Mom hadn't put them out the night before for some reason. Looking back on it, I'm glad that the men hadn't come further into the apartment. I guess this is one time being poor paid off.
This happened to my family when I was like 11 or 12. Background: we live in a small, close-knit southwestern town. My house is pretty small, 1 story and about 100 years old. Family of 4, my parents, me, and my younger brother about 5 years. We used to leave our front door unlocked, mostly because we didn't ever think something like this could have happened in our town. It was Christmas night. We all went to bed pretty early, since we're more of a Christmas Eve type of family. Me and my younger brother had each gotten $200 in cash from my grandpa to help pay for summer camps as a Christmas gift, and was sitting on my mother's desk drawers inside her very tiny office. At some point during the night, that money was stolen, along with my mother's car, which was promptly crashed down the street. I was asleep on the living room couch, which was right next to our front door. Important note, our front door is loud. It's made of a really old wood, and it's super heavy, and so it creaks almost every time you open it. Our two back doors were locked, so they might have come inside through the front. So basically, whoever it was had mostly just walked in on foot to get inside. It's creepy yet off-putting, but what really gets me is my mom's car. My mom keeps her keys in her jacket pocket, which hangs inside my parents' bedroom. On the wall across the door, again, you have to walk within a foot of my parents' bed to even get there. But even if my parents had slept through the nearby intruder, how did they know where my mom's keys were, or where she hung her jacket every night? It's not an obvious spot to put your keys, and they apparently knew exactly where to go. Even grabbing the cash from the desk drawer made sense. A lot of people keep important stuff there. The car thing just doesn't make sense to me. Also, they crashed it right down the street, like literally into the telephone pole at the end of our street. So we figured they were probably drunk, which raises even more questions. How were they able to open a super loud door and walk right by me without me even noticing? And how were they able to steal the cash and my mom's keys from right under their noses? Both me and my mom assume it was probably somebody we knew, but we have no idea who would probably have done that. We probably never will. So creepy Christmas robber, let's not meet.
"5 years ago on Christmas Day, I had something odd happen to me. I was living with my then boyfriend in a small one-bedroom apartment. We had exchanged a few gifts and had a few drinks. It was pretty early in the morning still, so we went to take a nap before going over to my family's house for some more gift-giving and Christmas dinner. Got up around 2 in the afternoon and headed out. I had to stop at a gas station for some soda to make some punch at my parents' house. Grabbed some Sprite, and on the way out, there was a guy in a filthy old and pretty ratty Santa outfit. It looked like he had rolled around in the dirt. He came up to me shouting Merry Christmas, and I was immediately greeted by the stink of booze and piss. His blue eyes were highlighted by the bloodshot red around them, and his Santa beard was half hanging off his face. I gave a quick and polite greeting back, and then ran to the car kind of freaked out by his appearance. About 10 miles down the road, my parents lived about 45 minutes away from me, and my boyfriend remembered he had to get some more pods for his vape, so we pulled into another gas station. While my boyfriend was in there, the same Santa came up to the car. My window was down because the heater in the car was broken, and it either was off or on full blast, no in between. The Santa approached the car and shouted the same greeting as last time. I could smell the booze and piss from 5 feet away. The beard was off in the same way as before, and his blue eyes were still bloodshot. No question in my mind, it was the same guy. Fortunately, my boyfriend came out before that guy could shout his holiday cheer at me anymore, and we took off. I still can't figure out how that Santa got 10 miles down the road, almost at the same time we had. I never saw him get into a car, and no other cars were even in the parking lot. Besides that, he was in no condition to drive. I still think about this and can't figure it out. "4 years ago, we had a big snowfall where I live. It was a couple of days before Christmas, and while we don't live in the middle of nowhere, we do live on the outskirts of town and on a large piece of property. I was out shoveling the back walk and noticed footprints all around the house. They were too large to be the wife or kids. I'm the only grown man in the house, and the prints were a bit bigger than mine. I also hadn't been out that day before that, and hadn't ever walked all the way around the house. We had been getting a lot of packages delivered through UPS, and chalked it up to one of the delivery men having walked around the house looking for a place to leave a package, because with all the snowfall, there wasn't a clear area to leave them. So I forgot about them and finished shoveling the sidewalks and front porch so they had a clear spot to leave any more packages. There was another big snowfall that night, and the next day I went out to shovel again. This time there were fresh tracks in the snow again. I followed them around the house and saw that they came from the back fence. That's not the way the delivery people come to the house. The footsteps led out to the back alley area, but I lost them in the multitude of car tracks. I then knew someone had been casing our house. I didn't have the time or means to get cameras set up around the house, so I decided to stay up that night and keep an eye on the place. Sure enough, around 11 at night, I see a silhouette of a person come sneaking up through the backyard. The light on the garage backlit him, and he wasn't too difficult to spot. I called the police and reported a prowler on my property. They must not have understood me or something, because 10 minutes later, a cop car comes down the street with their lights flashing and sirens on, not running silently so they could catch the guy. The guy heard them and was out the back and down the road before they got to my door. I told them what I had seen and they went out to look for him. They never did catch him and he never came back, so I guess it kinda worked. I'm just glad this happened in the winter and not in the summer. I would have never seen his tracks and knew to stay up and look for him. I don't know what he wanted, if he was just a peeping Tom or if he intended to break into the place. I do have a Ring doorbell cam now, and it hasn't caught anyone else on the property.
Okay guys, I'm gonna keep this short. Yesterday evening, Christmas Eve, my fiance and daughter came home from doing Christmas with my family. We find a bullet had been shot into my daughter's room. We called the police, took pictures of the points of impact, and looked for the bullet. We couldn't find the bullet, but the officer took a report, and the apartment maintenance came over to take a look. Fast forward to tonight, getting home from Christmas with my fiance's family, and picking up his daughter for the week. We've just moved in, so we asked them to straighten up their toys to their right places. 5 minutes later, my 6-year-old daughter comes in running in the living room yelling, "Mama, I think I found the bullet." Sure enough, she had found the bullet under her bed. I collected the bullet. As my fiance called the police, we turned the bullet in. So person who shot into my 6 and 7-year-old daughter's room, you better pray we don't meet.
I was 21 and had come home from college for the holidays. It was great to be back in my old room and in my house again, even though strange things always happened in that place. We all knew it was kinda haunted, but nothing major ever really happened. It was more minor stuff we kinda lived with. Doors closing on their own, cold spots even during the summer. Sometimes things would disappear and reappear later on. A bit of a nuisance, but nothing to get upset about. This time, though, was one of the only times something big had happened. It was a couple of days after Christmas, and I was up late watching a movie I'd gotten as a present. No one else was up, and I was on the couch eating popcorn and laughing my ass off. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a blue wisp go down the hallway. I kinda jumped a bit and then got up to see what it was. There was nothing there, so I went back to the couch to finish my movie. An hour later, I went and got ready for bed. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth when I heard the sound of someone crying. Concerned that something had happened, I went to my parents' room to check on them. They were both fast asleep. As I left their room, I heard the crying again, this time coming from the living room. Went there, and for a brief second I saw the apparition of a young girl in front of the Christmas tree. She was gone almost as soon as I saw her, but from what I could make out, she was kneeling in front of the tree crying, and then she was instantly gone. I felt immediate sadness and I wanted to cry as well. That was strange because I'm usually a pretty happy person. The feeling didn't last long, and in the next hour I was fast asleep. I have no clue what that was about or why it happened around the holidays. I just remember not only feeling sad, but also a profound feeling of loneliness. There's no particular history of the house that I know of that happened around Christmas. It's a pretty old house, so who knows what's happened there, but I do feel like it was tied to something about the holidays. My parents moved a year later to be closer to family, and I never went back there. "15 years ago, when I was in my 20s, I went to a Christmas party. It was a little get-together of some friends, probably about 20 people or so if I remember correctly. By the end of the night, I was pretty drunk and in no condition to drive, so one of my friends offered to give me a ride. They had a really beat-up old Honda that we piled into. I lived about 20 minutes out of town on a state road, and his car broke down halfway there. This was 2006, and cell phone coverage wasn't the greatest. There were dead spots all along that road, and we happened to be in one. He said he had signal about a mile back and was going to walk until he could make a call. I stayed with the car in the back seat laying down. I don't know how long had passed. It seemed like forever, but eventually I heard a car pass by and then stop. I thought maybe my friend had gotten help, but continued to lay there not wanting to move. The car door opened and the lights came on. I got up to see who it was, and it was a couple of teenage boys I had never seen before. One of them was already inside trying to get the stereo out. They were surprised to see me, and one of them yelled something. I was pretty drunk still and started slurring my words and yelling at them to get the hell out of the car. I must have crawled over the back seat because the next thing I remember was being on the road and getting kicked. Snow was all over my face and inside my jacket. If I hadn't been so drunk, I'm sure it would have hurt like hell. Soon, my friend came running down the road, screaming at the kids to get away. I think he said he'd call the cops or something like that. But either way, the kids jumped back in their car and sped out of there. A tow truck came and got us. His alternator had been bad. Another friend came and took me to the hospital. I had contusions and a huge bump on my head, but somehow nothing had been broken. It hurt every time I breathed for the next few days. No clue who those kids were or why they thought getting into a beat-up Honda was a good idea. Just goes to show that even around the holidays, there are some real assholes out there.